What's up, folks? This is Leaf. I've been having a whole lot of fun lately building new decks and trying to see what works in this new Shimmering Skies meta. It's been awesome to go to locals and see so many different decks that all seem to be. It really feels like so many different decks are possible right now. So many things are viable. There's a lot of new color combinations that we haven't seen before that feel a lot stronger than they used to. And there's a lot more room for variations within color combinations that we're familiar with too. So I think what I want to show you today is a new Ruby Sapphire deck that I've been working on. I think Ruby Sapphire is a really strong choice right now, especially with it's almost like overwhelming popularity of Amber Steel right now. I think that's kind of a carryover from the last set, where Amber Steel finished really strong in set championships. Um, so a lot of people are playing Amber Steel, and I think Ruby Sapphire is a really good answer to that. So without further ado, let's take a look at the deck. The Max Power deck has some of the same objectives as the old Ruby Sapphire. Ramp early, control the board, play big characters, profit. But it has a different win condition. There's no Tamatoa and no Lucky Dime. Instead, we're using a combo of new cards from set 5, Maximus Team Champion and Gaston Pure Paragon. Let's take a closer look at how this works. Maximus Team Champion gets you 5 lore at the end of your turn if you have a character with 10 strength or more. The nice thing about Maximus, and what we're counting on, is that your opponent can't do anything about this initial lore gain. You play him, and when you pass your turn, you get lore. Our primary target for Maximus is Gaston Pure Paragon. He has 10 strength, so he's an obvious combo with Maximus, and while he costs 9 ink, his cost is reduced by 2 for each damaged character you have in play. It's not terribly hard to bring his ink cost down to 7 or even 5, especially once you have a Maui and other large bodies on the board. So why play this over Tamatoa or Dime? Well, it's arguably faster. Tamatoa requires items in play to quest for a lot of lore, and Ruby Sapphire has usually sacrificed most of their items to Hiram for card draw by the time you play Tamatoa, so you might spend a few turns digging to get your popsicles back first. Maximus and Gaston is 5 lore right out of the gate. It's also a little cheaper. Ending a game with Dime requires 9 ink all at once, while Gaston's cost can be reduced. Finally, both cards in the combo are powerful cards in their own right. Gaston has Rush and can solo any character or location, and Maximus can passively gain you 2 lore mid-game from a Maui or Big Sisu on the board. In the end, both work well. Clearly Tamatoa and Dime has been successful to this point, but I think Max Power makes a more agile and aggressive Ruby Sapphire deck. Let's take a look at a few other highlights from the deck. We're running Tipo to ramp on turn 2. Tipo is essential into aggro decks because he gives us both early game board presence and the ability in combination with Fishbone Quill to ramp to a Be Prepared on turn 4. Running Tipo instead of one jump ahead gives us more wiggle room with our uninkables and can't be sniped by an early Ursula Deceiver or Bare Necessities. Vision of the Future is basically Giga Develop Your Brain and is amazing both early and late game when you need to fish for a missing card. I can't emphasize enough how good this card is. Digging through 5 cards to find exactly what you need can bring you back in the game when you miss something in your mulligan, and can finish your opponent off faster when you grab the other piece of your win condition. The Flynn Sisu package is a great alternate opening against a lot of decks, demanding an answer early or putting some quick lore on the board. Flynn synergizes well with our objectives playing Maximus, or playing high strength characters, and can sneak some lore late game when you have a Gaston in play. Inkable Sisu gives us shift targets for Big Sisu, and could be a really good play into new Emerald decks that run hand catch-up devices like Clarabelle and Remember Who You Are. Uninkable, or Human Sisu, gives us more shift targets, and is a great early answer to aggressive lore characters like Daisy Duck. Big Sisu is of course the best aggro board wipe, gets 2 lore with Maximus, and devastates a lot of Emerald matchups as well. Kuzco Selfish Emperor gives Ruby Sapphire better location removal, which was a huge weak spot last set. The Cogsworth-like resist effect is just icing on the cake. Brawl is still here. There's just too many relevant targets in the meta, and becomes better with Ice Block. And at the top end, we're also running 2 copies of Maleficent Monstrous Dragon. Maleficent is a big character for Maximus, Inkable, and Unconditional Removal, which all appeal to me. But if there were a flex spot in this deck, I could see swapping her out for something a little lower in cost. This deck moves faster than the traditional Ruby Sapphire, and I find myself not inking past 7 or 8 most of the time. Your standard line when playing this deck is Popsicle, then Tipo, ramping into a Hiram on turn 3. Hiram is the most important part of the deck, drawing cards to feed your ramp, so mulligan aggressively for these core cards. Into aggro decks, Popsicle, then Tipo, then Quill lets you be prepared on turn 4. There are some hyper aggro openings that really demand the fastest possible response, and this is it. Once you stabilize, you've got 7 ink to work with, getting your own board set up. Without Tipo, Flynn into Sisu is also a great opener that puts some solid threats on the board right away. You can still follow with Hiram on 4, or if you have the cards Quill, to be able to shift Big Sisu on turn 5. Human Sisu is also good early, on something like a Daisy Duck, but obviously doesn't synergize with Flynn as well as her inkable counterpart. In a pinch, I don't mind Vision of the Future on turn 2. It's not ramping, but digging through 5 cards to find the specific piece you need can be huge. I especially like this if I'm missing Hiram or Quill in my opening hand. Mid-game, you want to control the board with beefy characters like Maui and Sisu, and watch for opportunities for safe challenges that can leave you with a damaged character to reduce Gaston's cost. Hiram's 6 willpower is perfect for this, and a couple of challenges can suddenly let you deploy Gaston for 5 ink to clean up any stragglers. Finally, when you're looking to finish the game, I like to play Maximus like a lucky dime, dropping in for a surprise 5 lore that your opponent didn't count on happening this turn. Be sure to keep an eye on the math already on the board when you're questing, to quietly put yourself into lethal range as quickly as possible. So what do you think? Is this version of Ruby Sapphire more versatile than the ones that we've seen before? Do you think it's faster? Is there something else that you would include? Let me know in the comments. So the full story is that this deck came about from me. Every set I try to make a deck with Alice growing girl. And there is some synergy there with Alice and Maximus, but ultimately it's really hard to keep her alive. It's a little bit too clunky of a combo, and I end up taking her out of the deck. But a lot of times the deck works better once she's not in it. But it got me to thinking, like, would you be interested in watching a video about thought process behind making decks? Like, sort of, I make a deck, I take it to locals, I see how it does, and I let you know. Like, I feel like that could be interesting to watch. Let me know what you think. Regardless, if you enjoyed this kind of video, please consider subscribing to me, and until next time, don't forget to have fun.